Let's go to the issues in Russia, where President Putin has had a pretty rough trot, hasn't he, after facing a failed coup over the weekend from one of his key allies, Wagner Group head Yevgeny Prigozhin, on Saturday. Joining me now to discuss this, and they're taking a break from their holidays, I might add, to join us, Labor MP Michael Danby, all the way from Tel Aviv in Israel, and Sky News contributor Kosha Gada from the snowy slopes of Mount Buller in Victoria. Well, welcome to you both. Great that you're having a break, but terrific that you could join us tonight. Michael, give us your take on what's been a rocky few days at the Kremlin.
Well, Prigozhin is the only effective fighting force that the Russians have had during their winter offensive. They're now in full-out conflict. His plane has actually arrived in Minsk in Belarus, and the previously weak character, Mr. Lukashenko, seems to have brokered some kind of arrangement. 50% of Russians, Peter, believe that this is a shadow boxing by ex-KGB head Putin to put the Prigozhin army in Belarus and attack Ukraine again from the north. I don't believe it's so. I believe it's a genuine fight between Wagner and the Russian military command, Shoigu and Gerasimov, and it weakens the fight with Ukraine. It all depends still what happens on the battlefield and whether those newly Western-equipped Ukrainian brigades are able to break through the land bridge from the Donbass to Melitopol or Mariupol.
Kosha, what do you think? Putin's surely now in a weaker position. I know that we've long speculated about his health and the likelihood that those around him could perhaps move on him, take him out in the very Russian way they do things there. But what's your take?
I think it does definitely, Peta, show a crack in Russian leadership and public cohesion, and potentially a chink in Mr. Putin's armor itself as we speak, for sure. But I think it also reveals a couple of other things quickly. It looks to me, when I look at the media coverage and the Western media, Russian-friendly media, and then also supposedly neutral media, like coming out of India and Brazil, it paints sort of a very different picture. And I just find that interesting and fascinating. And it's sort of a reminder that it's really hard to get a full handle on what's happening in the internal workings of Russia. But I do think in some way it definitely shows a weakening, and it creates an opening for the Western sphere to continue its involvement. And that, as we've discussed before, is a little bit of a complicated picture. It'll have some positive implications in terms of defeating Russia to the extent that that's the goal, but it also creates a lot of other complexities in the long-term picture as we think about just the West getting more and more involved in this conflict.
Michael, just before we move off, a lot of criticism from all quarters about the government's package of support, military support for Ukraine. I haven't found anyone other than the government itself that thinks the package is sufficient. What do you think?
Well, those M113s were used in the Vietnam War that we're giving them, Peter. I hope they have got night vision on them. They seem a pathetic contribution. I think, that they're also costed at retail value if you're able to resell those M113 armoured vehicles. They're not tanks, but you couldn't sell them anywhere in the world because no one would buy them. So it's really, not a very great contribution. I wish they would given them Hawkeyes and Bushmasters, and above all, we've got those F-18s sitting in the garage. I must say, I think it's not just the government, but it's the pathetic defence leadership we've got that's letting down the country with the defence review that we've had, and also the rearming of Australia in preparation for some aggression by a power to the north. Not good enough.